Welcome to my channel, The Three Mountains. My name is White Eagle. This video is about how to take control back of your life, and it's also called the ego problem, part 2. We start with a quotation from Master Samael. He says, "Brothers, each one of the psychic aggregates that come up in us has certain commitments. We could say, without exaggeration, that a thief, for example, carries inside himself a thief's cave, and each one of them have different commitments in different day, hour, and place. A fornicator carries in his interior a brothel full of customers. A homicide obviously carries in his psyche an assassin's club. Again, I say that each member of this club has his or her own commitments. A merchant or seller carries inside his psyche an entire market, so on and so forth." Now, let us try to unveil the teaching of what the master is saying in this quotation. We start with the law of recurrence. And I made this drawing today just for illustration purposes. I want you to have a picture of how your life or anybody's life develops. Our life is like a film, and every time we are born here, we come back here, we return, and we unfold our particular film, and we are unaware of it. We go through our life, but with the consciousness asleep. So here I depicted only events that, are important, let's say, and are related to our egos. So, for example, this person is walking throughout his life asleep, and his consciousness is asleep. And at the age of 16, he got drunk for the first time and developed an addiction to alcohol, for example. At the age of 22, he traveled to Australia and met this girl and tried drugs in a party. At the age of 33, I had a fight, he says, with a guy in a pub, and I got arrested by the police for disturbing the peace, etc., etc. These are just examples that I made up just for trying to explain to you how our life unfolds, here, and our future will unfold with different events, and we are mostly victims of the circumstances. Let us continue the explanation. Just a moment. The master gives an example of how the law of recurrence works. A certain person, for example, in a past life was adulterous. He left his wife for another woman. It is clear that when he is reborn, he brings in his psyche the I of adultery, the same I or ego that committed adultery in his past life. This ego can manifest itself during the first years of his life as an infant. That is impossible. If the event took place at the age of 30 years, for example, undoubtedly such ego of adultery will wait in the depth of the psyche for the age of 30 to arrive. Once the age of 30 arrives, then the ego will resurface from the depth and with a lot of strength. It will take over the intellect, the emotional center, and the motor sexual instinct center of the human machine in order to go and look for the lady of his dreams. Now, before the meeting takes place, this person makes a telepathic contact with the ego of such lady and arrange the meeting with her in such or such place, maybe a park, maybe a party. Obviously, their meeting comes to happen as before, yes, as in the past life. What is interesting is how an ego emerges from the depths of the psyche and pulls the intellect, the emotional center and motor in order to take the human machine precisely to the place where he has to meet the lady of his dreams. Inevitably, the same process will, the same process will happen to her, and the same scenario will take place again as before. Yeah, so again, I give you now another picture. So the same events that we lived in our past lives get repeated in this life, in each return or life. But we are victims of the circumstances. So it's like we are like puppets, like we are being manipulated by the ego, and we don't realize how or why things happen to us, So the person is again, just showing a person who has his consciousness asleep, and the egos are in control of his life or our life, So at the age of 35, for example, I was abroad and I got robbed while on holidays. At the age of 40, I left a party and had a car crash. At the age of 50, I traveled to Europe to watch a football match and got badly beaten up after the match by football fans, etc., etc., etc. So events keep on coming and we just go through them. And this is what the master is trying to show you, that we are not really, we don't have really much free will. Now, here are my comments that I want to, tell you about what I found out. How does telepathic contact work? Here, I want to point out that when the master speaks of the ego making a telepathic contact for arranging the meeting, this can be clearly seen in the astral if you're awake. One can see who is looking for you, and if the ego of the person is coming for good or bad intentions to arrange this meeting that will manifest in the physical plane. Yes, so everything happens in the astral plane first, and then it comes down here to the physical. So we continue. At this point, one can avoid such meetings or getting into further problems in the physical. How? Well, the obvious answer is that if you have seen in the astral what will take place, then you have in your hands, the chance to take control of your life and avoid the meeting. I give you examples because I get just this all the time. One example. Not long ago, a very respectable person, who is my neighbor, suddenly wants to come to my home to talk to me about important news he has for me. I agreed to meet him during the week at some point. I was busy, and I keep wondering in my head what is so important that he has to tell me. But at night, I see him clearly in the astral. The true intention of his ego is to try to make me accept him as my next partner or spouse. So, at knowing his true objective, I refuse him entry in my home. And I ask him to tell me the news, but in the street instead. How about that? Yes, so you choose how to change the situation. Also, every time a person thinks about you, then you get the message in the astral. This is a funny example where one time I received tourists in my house and I was charging for the room, the extra room I have per night, and it was only for one person only. I didn't want couples. Coincidentally, a lot of men, travelers, booked my room during that month. So I received them and they came at different times during the day, during the night, etc. One night I see my next door neighbor, who lives alone, in the astral, coming to my door just to observe that I was receiving one guy after another in my house. And his thought was loud and clear in the astral. If she's having one guy every night, I will also get myself women to come to mine. So I woke up and laughed as people are allowed to think whatever they want, But my point here is just to tell you that if somebody thinks about you, you can see them in the astral too. Now, if you do not have access to messages from the astral yet, or you need to take a decision right now, then I advise you to obey your intuition regarding any situation you find yourself in. And if your intuition is not that sharp, then remember what I said earlier in video 62 about doing God's will. Try to see if you're having these three things in accordance, right thought, right feeling, and right action. These three have to be in accordance with each other to be doing God's will on earth, right? Now let us continue. These are light examples of seeing the truth behind people's actions and whether to involve ourselves or not in different situations. Now let us continue with the example from Master Samael. Let us suppose that a gentleman in a pub entered a fight with another person in his past life. Do you think that just for the mere fact that the physical body ceases to exist, the ego will disappear too? The answer is no. The ego will remain in the upper dimension until when the person returns. It can manifest again inside the new body. This ego will enter into activity at the same age when the event happened in the past life. So if it happened at the age of 25, then the ego will wait until the age of 25 in the subconscious psyche. When the moment comes, it will take control of the centers of the human machine in order to repeat the fight. Before the meeting takes place, the ego of the person will make telepathic contact with the other person, and they will agree to meet probably in a pub. All this taking place on a subconscious level, and the person is unaware of it if he has his consciousness asleep. So these comments in brackets are mine, just to let you know. Now, once they meet in the pub, they will look at each other, recognize each other, they will attack each other verbally, and the fight will repeat itself. Now you see how, under our own volitive zone and our capacity for reasoning, many commitments take place. We are unaware of these arranged meetings and commitments we enter into with people from our past lives. Yes? So this is how the law of recurrence works. That is the mechanic function of such law. Therefore, by looking at things in this way, we do not have, in truth, what we call total freedom or free will. Truly, we are inserted inside the mechanicity of the law of recurrence, and that is a pity, says the Master. A man is what his life is. If a man does not work on his life, then that man is wasting his time miserably. These are words from the Master. How could we free ourselves from the law of recurrence? By working on our own life, killing the egos. And here I put a picture, from Greek times, showing these dramas, tragedies, etc. Because our life is like that. Let us read what the Master says. Unquestionably, our lives are made up of comedies, dramas, and tragedies. Comedies are for the comedians. The dramas are for the normal people, and the tragedies are for the evil ones. Smile on well. Now I'm going to give you an example of a tragedy. It's not nice, but I will tell you later on what's the reason why I am telling you this. Here, just a moment. Just a moment. Here I want to narrate my own discovery of a tragedy that I investigated in the astral about a girl who let her feelings run away with her as she was asleep, and her life ended as a result. So she was a victim of the circumstances, yes? So it happened that one day I was reading the news from Scotland that a killer, who was a foreigner, had been sentenced to prison for the death of a teenage girl. In the news, I could see the photo of the girl, and the circumstances of her death were that she was killed when she attended a job interview in his shop. In my head, I confess, I could not understand how come someone attends a previously arranged interview and the interviewer kills the applicant. So this event stayed in my head and caught my attention as we attending job interviews, but to end up dead at an interview, how strange, yes? Now let me continue. And so here we have the picture of the girl. And what happened? That night I woke up inside a house in the astral. The door of one bedroom was open and I got closer as I hear someone crying. I find a teenage girl dressed in a school uniform sitting on her bed, crying and lamenting what she had done. Yes, let's continue. I asked her, "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" And if my mom finds out what I did, she will be very upset with me, she replied. Tell me what happened, I insisted. I didn't recognize she was the girl from the news when I saw her. You promise you won't tell my mom? Not a word, I said. I couldn't keep my mouth shut, and I said horrible things to the man at the job interview. He rejected my application, saying, I'm not suitable for the job. Thanks for coming. I stood up, and angry, I called him names, and he exploded in anger when I insulted him. If my mom finds out what I did, she will ground me. She told me many times not to be racist and call people names. Yeah. So up to there, then my physical body pulled me back into the physical dimension. So I woke up and thought, who was that girl? Then I recognized her from the photo I had seen on the news the day before. It was her. She had lost her physical vehicle, but she was in her bedroom in the astral. So I realized that she was not aware that she had lost her physical body. She was only aware of her actions at the time. The master says that when people die and once they are in the astral, they keep thinking that they are alive and they visit the same places they used to visit when alive. As regards the events of her death, I could clearly understand that she had lost her control by shouting names at the foreigner instead of remaining silent and accepting the rejection, especially not knowing she was facing a potential killer. And the killer lost his temper and killed her. So why do I speak about this example? Although it is heartbreaking for me to speak about this, there is the need to wake up and stop behaving like machines. I am giving you this example to urge you to wake up, be alert, try to connect with your intuition and take control of your life. This event could happen to you, could have happened to me, to anybody. But if we are awake, then it will not happen, yes? Now in her next life, this teenage girl, when she arrives at the age of 16, she will have to meet again her killer, according to the law of recurrence. And if she does not control her mouth, then she probably could end up dead again. So how can we avoid something like this? I always think that this event or a similar one can happen to anyone, first of all. So if we manage to hear our intuition, then we will not attend that interview. Many times my intuition asks me to stay at home and I do obey. Or if we use the technique I gave you in video 62, right thought, right feeling, and right action, then we will not go inside a strange, place alone. In this case, the teenage girl could have gone with another teenage friend or her mom or somebody, a relative. But she went alone and the man was alone. And, the egos clashed with one another. Now, I leave you with this example to meditate on your life and how you do things in your life. And please change them accordingly. We must stop living life asleep. And especially, we do not want our life to end in a tragedy, like, in this example. See you in my next video, where we will continue talking about the ego problem. Thanks for watching.